I'm Cecil Walker,
And I'm Adam Frower.
and this is Possibilities. Today we're going to be chatting about uh, something that I think can come in handy in probably lots of moments in people's lives: how to keep going when things feel really difficult. I feel like that is a tall order, but maybe we can start to really shed some light on this in a meaningful way. Um, I guess first it just helps kind of just to very clearly make a distinction on what that difficulty kind of looks like, and then what it means to keep going, keep pushing through. What is that when we think about moving forward in hard times? What
Yeah.
comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I think obviously because we are clinicians, lots of times people come in and when we ask them, what are you hoping from this process? People will usually or often say something like, I'm just going through something really, really difficult right now. Maybe it's a transition that they have to make. Maybe it's an illness that they're trying to manage. Maybe it's, I'm struggling with mental illness. Maybe I have a lot of anxiety or depression or something like that. And it's just feeling like I'm so stressed out, things are piling on, and I'm just not sure I can continue on.
Mm-hmm.
I think other words that we sometimes use in this context are things like burnout or fatigue or, exhaustion. And oftentimes people will come and they'll say, I just don't know how much longer I can do this. I want all of this to end.
Yeah, I think that is the circumstance that we usually are facing when people come. I think of therapy as, this is a pause in life for a second to say, I want things to change. And I think what pushes people to the point of saying, I want things to change, is when it feels like it's gotten so hard, it's gotten so unbearable, it's gotten so dissatisfying. But then what does it look like then, I guess? What are we all maybe subconsciously picturing when we say, I don't know how to keep going, but I do want to keep going, even though this is really hard. What does the keep going look like?
Yeah, I think that's a really important kind of nuance that we need to highlight, is that oftentimes people come in and they will kind of envision themselves and say, like, I'm hopeless. I've run out of hope. And I think one of the things that's really important is that simply showing up at a clinician's office, like you mentioned, is in some sense an indication that there is still some hope, right? They're saying, I'm coming here to try to do something different. You said, like, it's a pause, it's a moment of change. They're saying, I want something to change.
Mm-hmm.
And inherent in that action is, I believe that change is possible, or I believe that I have the ability to do one more thing, or else they just wouldn't show up, right? They'd be like, it's useless, I'm done, I am giving up. And so I think that's one of the things that is really important, is just acknowledging there's still a grain of hope. There's still a desire that, or an expectation even, that something could change, and that's gonna get me over the hump that I feel like right now might be impossible.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that. That, maybe the very first step, which is inherent in going to therapy, but the very first step in dealing with a very difficult life circumstance, whether you're in therapy or not, is having to be able to accept the possibility of, I can keep going. Being able to build your foundation for whatever you're going to do, however you're going to move forward, whatever is going to change, is founded on top of things can change. I can keep going. I can find what it takes, or maybe I already have what it takes and can apply that. One way or another, this is possible. So to even ask that question, I think, and then begin to try to seriously answer it, it takes that type of assumption from the start.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So I think that the concept that we're talking about, like how do I keep going when things are really difficult? I think oftentimes it comes down to these really small details. One that we've already highlighted is like recognizing there's still hope present because you're trying to do something about it. I think another small nuanced detail that's important in that is that you haven't given up yet.
Yeah.
Right? I think oftentimes when people get desperate enough that they say, okay, I need to go get additional help, or this is beyond my resources, they tend to overlook how long they've been doing this, right? Oftentimes when people are struggling with something, they contemplate it a lot. They try to solve it in lots of different ways. And we kind of lose track of, man, I've been doing this one day at a time for quite some time. And I think one of the things that happens is you get to a point where you're like, it feels like this is never going to end. And so I look forward and it just seems indefinite.
Yeah.
And that looking forward into the indefinite, that's what gets overwhelming. But I think if you pull back and kind of get to that minute level, and you look at one day at a time, or you look at 1 hour at a time, or one event at a time, then you can kind of muster the strength, or you can say, okay, I know how to make it through this hour, or if I can just do this by the end of the day, that should be sufficient. And so I think one of the tasks of how to keep going is to try to avoid looking at how long is this going to last, and just say, how do I do this next bit? Whether that's a day, whether that's an hour, whether that's the event. And we oftentimes know how to do that, or we feel like I have enough strength to do it for this amount of time.
Yeah.
And so I think that is one of the key components as well, is stop looking at the totality of what it can be and look at the components of what build that totality.
Yeah. What I would add on top of that, I think that is a really important thing, is zooming into the step-by-step, the way that you just make your focus just what's right in front of you, and that sizes it down quite a lot. But I would even add on to that, holding on to the very real fact that it's going to progressively get easier, more doable for you. And you can even lean into that and make it so that this is some natural part of just the way you live your life now, dealing with this thing in some type of efficient or effective way. Sometimes people want to, they have health concerns, really terrible health concerns, and they have to make lots of really extreme changes for their health benefits. So you definitely are going to have to think about, how do I reorient my life? How do I start to build some of these things into my day-to-day to start to see myself handling this difficult situation? And that could, at face value look like, oh, my whole life's going to turn upside down. But maybe actually it just looks like I got to add on to my morning routine a couple extra things. I got to go, do a little bit of exercise in the morning, or those meals that I usually like to eat, I might have to make some substitutions or change some things around, add something onto that. So it's acknowledging that the whole path doesn't feel like the first day, that's for sure. It doesn't feel like it's as hard as it was when you first started out. But it also doesn't have to feel as unfamiliar as it did when you first started out. It can feel like, this is my life. This is, what I'm used to now.
Yeah, I think that's a really important component. One of the things that brings up for me is, I think, I'm going to butcher this quote, which my wife will be very disappointed because it's one of her favorite quotes. But Ralph Waldo Emerson said, in essence, that which we persist in doing gets easier, not because the nature of the task changes, but our capacity to perform the task increases. So, in essence, that thing that we do over and over and over and over and over, we get better at doing that. And so it's not that this thing got easier to do, but my ability to do this thing gets heightened because I've done it so many times. So I think that's kind of an essence, a bit of what you're talking about, is like just doing it a lot of times by nature will make it easier. I think the other thing is we'll learn, right? We'll learn how to do things. We'll learn from that trial and error what seems to work, what works a little bit in this moment, what doesn't work, what do I need to let go of. And I think, again, kind of bringing it down to this minute level, we might need to pay really close attention to what is it that's working and what is it that's not working. And then trying to do a bit more of what's working. I was thinking about, as many of you know, I have 3 kids, and those first nights when each of those kids come home from the hospital, it is torture. And it's not even the first night, it's like the first 3 months or 4 months. I mean, it just feels interminable. Their sleep schedule is like completely opposite of what it's supposed to be. And you slowly over those months just like plead for 5 more minutes of sleeping during the night. And one of the things that happens as you're like just struggling to stay awake is you start to like hold the baby in a particular way, or you start to move in a particular way, or I had one baby who it sounds like I was smuggling her, but she would put her face down in my arm, and then if I walked in figure eights, then she would calm down and she would start to fall asleep. But it took me months to figure out, oh, it's the figure eight for some reason that seems to work. And the worst thing in the world is when you try and they're finally asleep, and either you try to sit down, it's like they have a barometer and they're like, you're too low, then they start to cry, and so then you have to stand back up. Or even worse, you finally got them to sleep and you're trying to put them in their crib and not move at all and be like, now I have to get my hands out from underneath you without waking you up. And over time you learn, again, kind of these different tricks, these different things, and it gets slightly better. But at the same time, you still have to go about your regular life, right? You still have to go to work. You still have to make meals. You still have to care for yourself. And you're just exhausted. And it literally feels like this is never going to end. And I think, again, if you take it as this night or at some point, every other kid has learned how to sleep. Surely my kid is going to learn how to sleep too. You can hold on to, I just have to get through this night, or I know that if I after my meeting tomorrow I have enough time that I can take a nap, right? And so I think learning those little skills as you go and taking them one thing at a time, that's somehow I survived doing this 3 times.
Survived it 3 times. But I think that brings me to the last thing that I can think of that really helps with dealing with difficult situations, especially if it feels like it's a very prolonged kind of circumstance, like children tend to be. It's a long deal with those. And that's being able to find and connect the meaning behind the difficult thing that you're dealing with. I don't have any children, and I can't think of a single reason that would be strong enough for me to lose that kind of sleep. But I could very well see how when you're in that desperate place, you're in that sleepless place, and you look and you see that it's all for this child, it's all for this person that you made, that you love. You feel like, I'll go as many days as I need to without sleep for them to be all right. And I think the same thing applies to any kind of situation. If you're able to find purpose in that difficulty that you are managing and you're fighting through, with the right purpose, the right meaning, I feel like anyone could do anything. No obstacle feels big enough or fierce enough to keep you away from accomplishing whatever that purpose is. It feels like you have.
Yeah, I think that's really, really valuable. You kind of have to be honest with yourself, right? There's a bit of integrity in there to say, like, why am I doing this difficult thing? What does it mean? Is this supposed to make me a different person? Is this supposed to help me to achieve something I want to achieve? And so I think evaluating, is it worth putting in all this effort to accomplish this? Does it align with my purpose? I think that's really, really an important step. And that's the final thing that I would say is that I've found that people who tend to cope well with difficulty, whether that's chronic illness, whether that's a life transition, they don't try to do it alone. That oftentimes, again, like when we were having children, I was able, even though she was exhausted, to rely on my wife, to share the burden with her, those kinds of things. But I think you think about things like Alcoholics Anonymous, right? They built in a system of come to meetings, have a sponsor, have somebody ready to call. When you work at a crisis line, oftentimes when you're building these steps for how are you going to deal with this moment that's really, really difficult, one of the key components that they'll continually ask about is who can you reach out to? Who could you call if you need additional help or support? And so I think knowing that meaning is really important, but also if somebody else can help hold that meaning for you, if they can remind you of why you're going through this or what this means to you, if they can support you through that process, that increases the ability to kind of sustain that effort, because now you don't have to do it all on your own. Somebody else can do that for you, right? And so I think there's keys in there of you don't have to just carry the load, or you don't have to carry the meaning. The more you share, the less the load feels.
Yeah, to me that sounds like these are external reminders of the purpose or purposes that we carry, the meanings in us in our fight against whatever difficult things. I might feel totally down and powerless, or like it's not worth it to go on, but such and such person who I love very much and who loves me very much sees it very differently. They can't picture a world without me here or without me continuing the fight. And I want to see a world where they are still doing well too, and me being here fighting for them is part of that. So it feels like relationships kind of bring out very real externalizations of the meaning and purpose that you can carry.
Yeah, I think because we are relational beings, oftentimes meaning comes from what is our relationship like? What kind of a person am I supposed to be? Often is answered by the relationships within which I'm situated.
Yeah. Well, I think we did the impossible. We solved how to deal with a really difficult situation in only a matter of minutes.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. I guess I just would love to hear your feedback, your thoughts as you have overcome challenges and difficulties. What has worked for you? What have you found has really been something that has helped you kind of either keep going or triumph, overcome this challenge or difficulty? Let us know in the comments. Also, if you feel like this would be useful to somebody who's currently going through something really difficult, please feel free to be that support to them. Share this video with them, have a conversation with them about their meaning, and let us know what successes you find there too. So keep in touch and share this where possible.